10 steps to reinvent your life starting today. This isn't just a pretty motivational phrase, it's an urgent call. In this content, Mel Robbins and Hoda Kotb taught us the following. The life that exists today is not a rough draft of the life that exists tomorrow. And the biggest mistake is believing that it's too late, this isn't for me, or it's better not to mess with what's already stable. First of all, we need to keep the following in mind. No one changes their life when everything is comfortable. Reinvention begins when there's courage to stop. Look at your own routine and admit that something isn't right, even if on the outside, everything seems good enough. These teachings reveal, based on real experiences and behavioral science, that the biggest block isn't lack of talent, age, or opportunity. It's the silent fear that paralyzes decisions, delays dreams, and keeps people stuck in old versions of themselves. And the good news, reinvention doesn't require a collapse, a crisis, or a dramatic fresh start. It begins with an honest thought, a conscious choice, and one small action taken today. Here, you'll understand how to change your own path without waiting for permission, without waiting for the perfect moment, and without destroying everything to start over. There is a possible, practical, and human path, and it starts now. Before we move on, make sure you've already hit the like button, but only do it if you're someone who loves personal development content. And write in the comments, I have a success mindset. Number 1, stop the train consciously. Reinventing life begins with a decision that almost no one has the courage to make. To stop. Not to run away, not to accelerate, not to get distracted. To stop. Most people live on autopilot, repeating the same days, believing that it will get better eventually. But it doesn't get better on its own. What Mel Robbins and Hoda Kotb make clear is that life doesn't change through unconscious movement. Change begins when there is an intentional pause. Stopping the train means looking at your own routine from above, as if you were observing someone else living. How is work? How is your body? How are your relationships? Is there enthusiasm or just resistance? When there is constant tiredness, frequent irritation, and the feeling of living in survival mode, that's not normal. It's a sign. Neuroscience explains that the brain adapts to discomfort when it becomes predictable. Therefore, even a life that no longer makes sense can seem safe. The problem is that security without meaning becomes an emotional prison. Stopping the train breaks this automatic pattern and activates the prefrontal cortex, responsible for conscious choices and future planning. This pause doesn't require radical decisions. It requires honesty. It's about looking at your own life and asking, without emotional makeup, does this still resonate with me? Does this still respect me? Does this still expand me? Those who don't ask these questions live the life that's left, not the life they chose. Stopping is not weakness. It's maturity. It's the first real act of reinvention. When the train stops, direction ceases to be a matter of chance and becomes a matter of choice. Number 2, tell the truth out loud, even if it's just a whisper. No reinvention begins in the external world. It begins the moment the truth ceases to be buried. Mel Robbins and Hoda Kotb show something essential. What is left unsaid becomes an emotional burden. The brain expends enormous energy repressing unacknowledged desires, dissatisfactions, and dreams. And this expenditure turns into anxiety, procrastination, and a feeling of being stuck in life. Speaking the truth aloud isn't about making a public announcement or making an immediate decision. It's about internally acknowledging what has been ignored for too long. This doesn't make me happy anymore. I want something different. I deserve more than this. When the truth is verbalized, the brain changes its internal state. Neuroscience calls this cognitive externalization. By naming it, the problem ceases to be diffuse and becomes processable. Hoda recounts that his life changed when he dared to admit a desire that seemed impossible, not because the solution appeared immediately, but because the simple act of speaking opened up mental space for new possibilities. What is repressed keeps the door closed. What is said unlocks it. Many women live trapped not because they don't know what they want, but because they've learned to believe that wanting is selfishness, ingratitude, or too much of a risk. But repressed desire doesn't disappear. It transforms into silent frustration. Speaking the truth, even if you're alone, is an act of neurological courage. It's the moment when the mind stops fighting against itself. Reinvention begins precisely there, when the silence ends. Number 3, stop confusing fear with intuition. One of the biggest obstacles to reinventing your life is believing that every feeling of discomfort is a signal to retreat. It's not. Fear and intuition activate different areas of the brain, but emotionally they seem the same. That's why so many people say, "Something tells me not to do it," when in reality, the brain is just trying to keep everything as it is. Fear originates in the amygdala, the structure responsible for protecting against risk. It hates change because change is unpredictable. Intuition, on the other hand, comes from accumulated experiences, personal values, and deep perception. The practical difference is simple. Fear screams urgency, chaos, and catastrophe. Intuition is firm, silent, and consistent. Mel Robbins emphasizes that whenever something important comes up, fear arrives first, not because the decision is wrong, but because it's new. If you wait for the fear to disappear before acting, life will remain stagnant. Fear never disappears before action. It diminishes afterward. Many women stay in relationships, jobs, and patterns that hurt because they interpret the fear of leaving as a sign that they should stay. This is not wisdom. It's conditioning. The brain prefers known discomfort to the risk of the unknown. Reinventing life requires a specific skill: learning to act despite fear, not in its absence. When a decision makes rational sense, respects personal values, and expands one's vision of the future, but still evokes fear, that's not a warning sign. It's growth. Those who learn to differentiate between fear and intuition regain control of their own path. And that is a real game changer. Number 4, reinvent your life through small daily decisions, not giant leaps. A common mistake is believing that reinvention requires a huge, dramatic, and immediate decision. This paralyzes. The brain goes into threat mode when it imagines changes that are too big, and the natural tendency is to postpone them. Mel Robbins makes it clear: real transformation happens through consistent micro-decisions, not isolated heroic acts. The science of habit shows that the brain changes through repetition, not intensity. Small daily choices create new neural pathways. This is how identity begins to change. It's not about changing your life, it's about changing today's behavior. Tomorrow, repeat it. After a while, life follows suit. Hoda talks about using short blocks of time to explore possibilities. 30 minutes a day for 30 days completely changes the perception of capability. This method reduces anxiety because it transforms the unknown into something measurable. The brain stops imagining catastrophic scenarios and starts dealing with facts. Reinvention doesn't begin when everything is resolved. It begins with minimal action despite the confusion. Reading a page, sending a message, researching an option, taking care of your body for 10 minutes. These actions seem small, but they communicate something powerful to the brain. We are in control. Those who wait for total clarity before acting don't act. Clarity comes after the action, never before. Micro-decisions build trust, and trust sustains bigger changes. Life doesn't change all at once. It changes every day in ways that seem insignificant, but aren't. Number 5, replace the question, "What's wrong with me?" with, "What is this phase trying to teach me?" When life goes into crisis, the mind tends to personalize the problem. The brain interprets difficulties as personal failure. This pattern generates shame, self-criticism, and paralysis. Mel Robbins reinforces something essential. Difficult moments are not proof of incompetence. They are invitations to adjust course. Cognitive psychology shows that the right question completely changes the emotional response. "What's wrong with me?" activates guilt and helplessness. "What is this phase asking me to learn?" activates curiosity, responsibility, and growth. It's not empty positive thinking. It's science-based cognitive restructuring. Hoda shares that major life-turning points came after periods when everything seemed out of place. The difference wasn't the pain itself, but the interpretation of the pain. Instead of resisting the discomfort, she began to listen to what it was signaling. Limits exceeded, desires ignored, values misaligned. Every difficult phase carries information. Extreme tiredness often indicates excess. Demotivation points to a lack of meaning. Constant anxiety signals a loss of internal control. When these signs are interpreted with maturity, they cease to be enemies and become guides. Reinventing life isn't about eliminating problems. It's about learning to extract direction from chaos. Changing the question changes the stance, and changing the stance changes destiny step by step. Number 6, stop waiting for confidence to act. Action comes first. One of the biggest myths in personal development is believing that confidence appears before action. It doesn't. The science is clear. Confidence is a consequence of repeated behavior, not a prerequisite. Mel Robbins insists on this because that's exactly where most people get stuck in their own reinvention. The brain builds self-confidence based on evidence. Every time an action is avoided, the mind registers, "I am not capable." Every time an action is taken, even with fear, the brain registers, "I can handle this." This is how identity changes. It's not motivation, it's neural learning. Waiting until you feel ready keeps everything exactly as it is. Because the brain associates the new with risk and will never generate a sense of security before the experience. Those who act despite insecurity create new internal tests of their ability. Hoda demonstrates this throughout the story itself. No great decision came with absolute certainty. It came with fear, doubt, and yet, movement. Courage did not eliminate fear. It simply chose not to obey. Reinventing life requires accepting temporary discomfort in exchange for permanent growth. The right question isn't, "Do I feel confident?" but "What small action can I take even without confidence?" The answer to that question changes everything. Action generates evidence. Evidence generates trust. Trust sustains new life. Number 7, change your inner language and you change your destiny. Nothing impacts the reinvention of life as much as the words repeated daily within the mind. Language is not a detail, it's a command. The brain believes what is said frequently, not what is desired occasionally. Mel Robbins and Hoda Kotb show that many people are not bound to reality. They are bound to their own internal dialogue. When the language is, "I'm lost," the brain goes into give-up mode. When the language changes to, "I'm searching," the brain goes into exploration mode. This isn't semantics, it's neuroplasticity. Words shape perception. Perception shapes behavior. Psychology proves that the brain does not fully distinguish between thought and real experience. Repeating phrases of helplessness strengthens circuits of helplessness. Repeating phrases of possibility activates problem-solving networks. It's not about denying problems, but about choosing descriptions that open up paths instead of closing them. Hoda shares that simple phrases completely changed his emotional energy during difficult times. Not because reality changed, but because his focus changed. And where focus goes, action follows. Reinventing life requires verbal responsibility. The way one's own story is told determines the next chapter. Whoever changes the language changes the meaning, and whoever changes the meaning changes the direction. Number 8, reinvention is not selfishness, it's emotional responsibility. Many women don't change their lives because of guilt. Guilt about disappointing others, about seeming ungrateful, about wanting too much. But remaining in a life that no longer makes sense is not noble. It's self-abandonment. Mel Robbins reinforces that living in alignment doesn't hurt others. What hurts is living frustrated, resentful, and disconnected. Psychology shows that unexpressed emotions turn into dysfunctional behaviors. Those who don't reinvent themselves begin to take it out on their bodies, their moods, and their relationships. Constant irritation, impatience, exhaustion, and apathy are classic signs of someone living outside of their own truth. Reinventing life means taking responsibility for one's own emotional well-being. It's not about abandoning duties. It's about stopping self-neglect. When a woman respects herself, she teaches her brain and her surroundings how she should be treated. Hoda makes it clear that difficult decisions don't mean a lack of love. They mean honesty. And honesty sustains healthier relationships than silent sacrifice. Choosing your own integrity isn't about hurting anyone. It's about stopping living according to other people's expectations. And that choice changes everything. Number 9, don't wait for the perfect moment. It doesn't exist. One of the biggest saboteurs of reinvention is the endless wait for the right moment. The brain uses this idea as a protective strategy. While waiting, it avoids risks. The problem is that the ideal moment is a fantasy created by fear. Mel Robbins makes this clear. Life only changes when there is an imperfect decision in an imperfect scenario. Behavioral science shows that the brain will always find reasons to procrastinate. Lack of time, money, energy, support. If all the variables needed to be aligned, nobody would change anything. Reinvention happens in the midst of chaos, not after it. Waiting to be ready is a trap. Readiness doesn't precede action. Readiness is built along the way. Each step, taken under imperfect conditions, teaches the brain to tolerate uncertainty and strengthens emotional autonomy. Those who change their lives are not those who are less afraid, but those who stop negotiating with fear. Time will pass anyway. The only real choice is whether life will be different when that time has passed. Number 10, reinventing yourself is a process, not an event. The ultimate mistake is believing that reinvention happens on a specific day, with a definitive decision. It doesn't. Reinventing life is a continuous process of adjustments, conscious choices, and internal alignments. There is no end point. There is only evolution. Mel Robbins and Hoda Kotb show that each phase requires a new version of yourself. What worked at 20 may not work at 40. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. This is not failure. It's growth. Developmental psychology confirms a healthy identity is flexible. Those who allow themselves to change avoid resentment, rigidity, and the feeling of a wasted life. Reinvention doesn't erase the past. It honors the courage to continue evolving. The question isn't, when will my life change? The question is, who am I choosing to be today? Because it is this daily choice that builds any possible new life. If you've made it to the end, write this: I didn't get here by chance. Reinventing life isn't about becoming a different person. It's about stopping living on autopilot and consciously taking control of your own story. Nothing said here requires external permission. It all begins with an internal choice, made today, right now, at this very moment. Now send this video to 2 people on WhatsApp who need to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've left a video here on the screen that you need to watch today. Click there, and I'll see you on the other side.